So this is my pre-reading vlog. I chose this book because I was interested to see the experiences of someone in the LGBTQ community and just to learn more about his experiences living in the South and in the church with that. I anticipate the book to be about the different struggles he went through while being part of that community, considering his living conditions. And I'm most looking forward to getting a better understanding of their perspective and what they go through on a daily basis all around the country and the world, I guess.
I chose Boy Race because I'm interested in seeing another queer person's story represented and seeing how that applies to mine and how it's different from mine and how it's different from millions of other people's stories. I anticipate the book will be about internalized homophobia and really coming to terms with yourself and how it can be a really long, hard thing to do. And I'm most looking forward to reading a story that I can apply to my own life and seeing something that does reflect me to a degree, but how it's still different from my story and how I can really just learn about myself and about someone else, because that's really cool.
I anticipate the book will probably be about his hardships, definitely, especially like growing up in a very conservative fundamentalist family. Like, I know that's very anti-gay, and that must have been a very hard struggle, and like just how he figured out that who he is who he is, and he doesn't need to change that for anyone. I'm really looking forward to just like learning about how you deal with that and just learning how his strength, how he learned to be so strong and brave through all of this, because it must have been very like taxing to be against what your family believes in, for against what you believed in your whole life, just being bold and different. And I think that will be really interesting.
Go. Our first question is, what are the long-term psychological effects of being in Love in Action?
I think it'll definitely affect his future relationships, and it kind of perpetuates this thing of shame. Like, he always will have this like internal homophobia, which will definitely carry into all of his future relationships.
I think that it's going to have an extreme negative outlook on all of his new opportunities and his future opportunities. And when he leaves Love in Action, it is going to have it's going to affect the positive outcome of his transformation, I guess.
I definitely think it'll change his outlook on different topics that he had to face in LIA. I know a lot of people struggled with like suicide and things like that, and I definitely think he'll have a negative outlook on things like that, and he definitely struggles with suicide too. So our question for section 2 is, after his rape, do you think Gerard will ever develop another functional relationship with a guy?
I think it's going to cause some definite trust issues, just like it would in any relationship, and it would affect him internally, but I think that he can eventually grow into doing that again.
I think it'll always be dysfunctional, but I think with the right amount of time and effort, he could definitely get there, and I have a lot of hope for him.
I definitely think at one point that Gerard had some like shame in thinking that his rape was punishment for who he is, and I think it definitely set him backwards in his journey towards like accepting himself, but I do believe he'll be able to have a functional relationship.
Video 3.
Why do you think the book is called Boy Race?
I think it's because he's trying to erase how he feels and all of the bad things that have happened to him from being raped, and just how he actually like wants to be, just so he can fit in with his community and successfully make it through LIA.
I definitely think some parts of him were erased going through this process. There's a part in the section 3 where he talks about who he was before LIA, who he was after. And I definitely think he means like how parts of him were erased and how he wanted to erase some of those parts.
I feel like LAA was meant to get rid of a lot of parts of him, and so now he's kind of dealing with, kind of like when you erase something and there's still stuff left over, he's trying to figure out who he is from that, and like the shadow of him that was left over.
Good job, guys. We're done.
As I finished the book, I ended up really enjoying it. I loved the different thought process that the author ended up having, and his overall positivity about his situations. My favorite part was probably towards the end when the mom started to accept him, and my least favorite part was probably while he was in college and he just struggled a lot personally and he was alone. I was pretty spot on with my anticipations for the book. I just kind of figured how it would go and how it would end. I didn't think it would have a bad ending. And the most difficult part about reading this book was probably piecing all of the different aspects together. I felt like there's a lot of information thrown at once that you had to keep in mind while learning more information.
I had an overwhelmingly positive reaction to the book. I really genuinely enjoyed it, and like I don't know if everyone can say so, but I really liked it. My favorite part is I really enjoyed how he skipped around and how every part is like different in the timeline, and I know that might have been one of the more difficult parts of reading the book, but it definitely added this like extra cool dimension that made it really different and unique. I think I was pretty correct with my anticipation of the book. It did really deal with that idea of internalized homophobia and really struggling with coming to one's identity, but I definitely think it took a whole different route than anything I could have expected, and just how it handled the issue, and I think that really made it interesting and unique and kept me guessing, and I really enjoyed it.
My favorite parts were probably when he talked about like before LIA, like kind of what led up to it, or like what he thinks contributed to where he ended up, and just like parts of his more fundamentalist childhood, because like that's very different from the house I live in, and I thought it was very interesting to hear about. I didn't really like how much he skipped around though in the book, because it was a little bit hard to follow, and that would probably be like one of the more difficult parts of the book. Like it was just like a little bit hard to follow at some points when he like went from different time periods like back and forth between like paragraphs and things like that. I was definitely correct that he had a very like, he struggled definitely in his journey towards getting to accepting himself, and even like eventually getting his family to just say they want him to be happy and healthy and alive.